you ready to confront pure terror? Turn on the lights, but they won't save you. We're opening the doors to a world where darkness doesn't just blind, it consumes the soul. Here, in the darkest corners of the night, even your breath can become a harbinger of nightmares. Question everything you knew about safety and comfort. Are you prepared to hear eerie whispers from nowhere invade your mind and torment every thought? Leave your fears at the door, because what we show you will make them burst forth. Are you ready to journey into the dark corners where every sound and shadow harbors an unknown danger? Sit tight and brace yourself, for the night is just beginning, and its horror could become your eternal companion. It's time to step into a world with no way back, where darkness will be your only guide.
Bob was an ordinary man with an extraordinary curiosity. He had always been drawn to the allure of abandoned places. The thrill of the unknown called to him. He spent weekends exploring forgotten buildings and derelict structures. His friends often questioned his obsession, but for Bob, it was more than a hobby. It was a passion. One day he heard whispers of an ancient house just outside of town. The locals spoke of it in hushed tones. They warned of strange happenings and eerie occurrences. Rumors circulated about people who had ventured too close and vanished without a trace. Intrigued by the stories, Bob felt an irresistible pull to investigate. He packed a small bag with a flashlight, a camera, and a sense of adventure. The journey to the house was filled with anticipation. As he drove through the winding roads, the trees loomed overhead like sentinels guarding a long forgotten secret. The house stood at the end of a narrow path shrouded in shadows. Its weathered facade was a haunting sight. Windows shattered and covered in grime. The door hung askew on rusted hinges. Bob approached slowly, his heart racing with each step. The air was thick with an unsettling tension, as if the house itself was alive and watching. He hesitated at the threshold. The stories echoed in his mind, but curiosity outweighed caution. He crossed the threshold into darkness. The interior was a time capsule frozen in decay. Dust motes floated in the faint light. Each creak of the floorboard sent shivers down his spine. As he explored the grim rooms, he felt a growing sense of unease. The walls seemed to whisper secrets long buried. Bob paused at a fireplace where the ashes of a long extinguished fire lay. He could almost feel the presence of those who had once inhabited this place, their laughter and their sorrow echoing through time. In the far corner of the main room, he noticed something unusual. A heavy wooden door concealed behind layers of debris. It was unlike anything he had seen before, old and sealed tight. Bob felt a thrill of discovery. With determination, he cleared away the rubble. A sense of foreboding washed over him. The door felt cold against his fingertips. It was as if it held the weight of centuries. Bob took a deep breath. As the heavy door creaked open, Bob was met with a surge of musty air that seemed to cling to his skin. The basement stretched out before him, shrouded in darkness that swallowed the feeble beam of his flashlight. Shadows danced along the cold stone walls. He hesitated at the threshold, the oppressive atmosphere weighing heavily on him. The stale air was thick with the scent of decay. Bob stepped into the basement, each footfall echoing in the silence. The dim lighting revealed the remnants of a space long abandoned. Dust coated every surface, and cobwebs draped like tattered curtains from the ceiling. It was clear that this basement was not merely a storage area. It was a repository of dark memories. He felt an eerie chill crawl up his spine as he took in the strange symbols carved into the stone walls. Their jagged lines twisted and contorted. As he moved deeper into the basement, Bob's mind raced with the stories he had heard. This place had once served as a site for exorcisms, a battleground for priests attempting to cast out the demons that plagued the possessed. But something had gone horribly wrong. Instead of freeing the afflicted souls, the rituals had failed, trapping the very evil they sought to expel. The whispers of the damned filled the air around him, low and guttural. Bob felt their presence, lurking just beyond the reach of his flashlight. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, the shadows thickening as if they were conspiring against him. Each step deeper into the basement intensified his dread. The air was suffocating, and the temperature dropped as he ventured further into the abyss. He could almost hear the tortured wails of those who had been ensnared by the dark forces that resided within these walls. The ghosts of failed exorcisms lingered in the corners, their rage and sorrow festering in the darkness. As he explored the depths, the psychological impact of his surroundings weighed heavily upon his mind. Bob's instincts screamed at him to flee, but his curiosity held him captive. He was acutely aware that he was not alone. The malevolent spirits were awakening. The realization hit him like a cold wave. He had unwittingly opened a door to a world of darkness. The basement was not just a physical space. It was a realm where time held no meaning and evil reigned supreme. He could feel their eyes upon him, watching, waiting for the moment to strike. As Bob stood in the middle of the basement, a chill swept through the air, wrapping around him like a shroud. The oppressive silence that had settled moments before seemed to shift, vibrating with an energy that felt alive. He could sense it before he saw it, a subtle stirring of something ancient and malevolent. As he ventured further, the shadows began to move with intention, swirling around him in a dance of malevolence. Bob's fear escalated, his instincts screaming at him to escape. Yet, the basement seemed to conspire against him, its hallways elongating, drawing him deeper into the abyss. The moment Bob turned to flee, the basement transformed before his eyes into a nightmarish labyrinth. The walls warped and shifted, twisting away from him as if mocking his desperate attempt to escape. As he stumbled deeper into the maze, the first horror emerged from the shadows. A grotesque figure slithered out, its form a horrifying amalgamation of twisted limbs and gaping maws. Its skin glistened with a slick sheen, reflecting what little light penetrated the darkness. The creature's eyes were hollow, voids of despair that seemed to absorb the light around them. It lunged at him with a speed that defied its hideous form, its many mouths screaming in unison, the sound reverberating through the air like a cacophony of tortured souls. Bob barely managed to dodge, his heart racing as adrenaline surged through him. But the labyrinth was relentless. Each turn brought forth new terrors. He encountered a being that resembled a man, but was distorted beyond recognition. Its face was stretched and contorted, its mouth a gash of jagged teeth that dripped with an unidentifiable substance. The creature seemed to know his deepest fears and insecurities, using them as weapons against him. Bob's mind raced. He could feel the weight of his past mistakes pressing down on him. He could almost hear the spirits laughing, their voices melding into a single haunting melody that echoed his fears. In a moment of despair, he stumbled upon a chamber filled with mirrors, each one reflecting a different version of himself. Some were grotesque, twisted forms that mirrored his insecurities, while others showed him as a triumphant figure, basking in the light of success. The reflections argued amongst themselves, each vying for his attention, pulling him in different directions. Bob's mind fractured under the weight of their conflicting messages. He felt himself losing grip on who he was, each reflection a reminder of what he could have been and what he feared he might become. Suddenly, the mirrors shattered, their shards flying towards him like shards of glass. He shielded himself, but the pieces cut deep. As the glass rained down, the reflections twisted into new horrors, forming amalgamations of his greatest fears and regrets. They surrounded him, whispering dark promises and taunting him with visions of failure. But Bob refused to succumb. He fought against the weight of despair that threatened to pull him under. Summoning every ounce of strength, he pushed forward, determined to break free of the labyrinth's grasp. He sprinted through the corridors, the air thick with the scent of decay. Just when he thought he had found a way out, the ground beneath him gave way, and he plummeted into a pit of darkness. He landed hard, the wind knocked from his lungs. As he gasped for air, he realized he was not alone. The pit was alive with the twisted forms of the damned, their faces contorted in agony. They reached for him, their hands grasping at his clothes, pulling him deeper into their torment. Panic surged within him, and he fought against their grasp, his body thrashing as he clawed his way back to the surface. Bob's determination burned brighter than the darkness surrounding him. He willed himself to escape, to conquer the labyrinth of horrors that sought to consume him. With a final surge of strength, he broke free from their grasp, scrambling up the walls of the pit until he found a ledge to pull himself up. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He had to find a way to reseal the basement before the malevolent spirits could escape into the world above. Bob's mind raced with desperate thoughts, searching for anything that could help him. Was there a ritual, an incantation, or perhaps an object that could serve as a key to restoring the seal? He needed to think fast. He pressed onward, determined to outpace the horrors that pursued him. Suddenly, he stumbled upon a room filled with ancient artifacts, remnants of the rituals that had once taken place in the basement. Bob's eyes scanned the shelves, searching for anything that might help him. He spotted a dusty tome, its pages yellowed with age. With trembling hands, he pried it open, hoping to find a clue. The words were written in a language he barely understood, but a single phrase leapt out at him. In darkness, bind the light. His heart surged with hope. If he could find a way to harness the light, perhaps he could seal the spirits once more. As he gathered the tome and a handful of strange artifacts, he heard the unmistakable sound of claws scraping against stone. The creatures were closing in. Bob's instincts kicked in, and he sprinted through the maze with renewed determination. He could hear their guttural growls echoing behind him, a chilling reminder of the fate that awaited him if he failed. With every step, the darkness pressed against him, threatening to swallow him whole. Just when he thought he might escape, he found himself cornered in a narrow passageway. The shadows coalesced into a monstrous figure, its twisted limbs reaching for him, eager to drag him into the abyss. But Bob was not finished yet. He recalled the artifacts he had collected their potential to bind the darkness. With a fierce cry, he hurled one of the objects at the creature, and it shattered upon impact, releasing a blinding light that illuminated the shadows. The entity shrieked, recoiling from the sudden brightness, and Bob took the opportunity to slip past it. He raced towards the basement's center, where he sensed the source of the malevolence pulsing like a dark heart. He clutched the tome tightly, reciting the ancient phrase over and over, his voice rising above the din of chaos. Just as he felt his strength waning, he summoned every ounce of courage and directed the artifacts towards the barrier. "In darkness, bind the light," he shouted, and the air crackled with energy. The light erupted from the artifacts, cascading around him in a brilliant explosion of luminescence. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in agony as the barrier flickered back to life, growing stronger with each passing moment. The pulse of the barrier grew steadier, the light illuminating the oppressive shadows that had consumed him. With a final surge of energy, he sealed the darkness, trapping the malevolent entities within their prison once more. As the last echoes of their rage faded, Bob collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. The basement fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting from the air. Bob took a deep breath, the air crisp and clear, knowing that he had not only saved himself, but countless others from a fate worse than death. The once oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a profound silence that echoed through the chamber. The malevolent entity had been vanquished, its anguished cries fading into nothingness, leaving behind only the faint remnants of its dark energy. Yet, victory came at a cost. Bob felt the fatigue settle into his bones, each muscle protesting against the strain of the confrontation. The dark spirits that had once lurked in the shadows were contained once more, their whispers silenced. But the victory was bittersweet. Bob's body bore the marks of the battle, the scratches from the creature's claws stung against the cool air, a reminder of how close he had come to being consumed by the darkness. He could still feel the lingering chill of the basement, a testament to the horrors that had taken root in this cursed place. With trembling hands, he reached for the ancient tome that had guided him through the ordeal. The pages were now infused with a gentle glow, and Bob felt a rush of gratitude for the knowledge it contained. He realized that the words he had recited were not merely incantations, but anchors that had tethered him to hope when despair threatened to pull him under. As he rose to his feet, a sense of purpose ignited within him. As he ascended the stairs, he felt a profound shift within himself. The encounter with the darkness had changed him, awakened something deep and primal. He was no longer just a curious explorer. He was a guardian against the shadows. With each step, he left behind the remnants of fear and doubt, embracing the strength he had discovered within. Bob emerged into the light of day, the sun shining brightly as if to welcome him back into the world. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with fresh air, the warmth of the sun enveloping him. The shadows of the basement still lingered in his mind, but they no longer held power over him. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, a warrior against the malevolent forces that sought to consume the innocent. Yet, as he glanced back at the ancient house, a flicker of uncertainty coursed through him. He knew that the battle was far from over. The darkness would always seek to reclaim its dominion, and he would need to remain vigilant. But for now, he had reclaimed the light, and with it, the hope that had once seemed lost. Bob was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, armed with the knowledge that he could confront the shadows lurking within and without. Months passed since Bob's harrowing encounter with the basement of the possessed. The sun now shone more brightly in his life, yet shadows lingered at the periphery of his existence. The world outside had resumed its usual rhythm, but Bob felt like a ghost drifting through the motions. Each day was a struggle, haunted by memories of the darkness he had faced. He had emerged victorious, yet the victory felt hollow. He had tried to return to his routine, to reintegrate himself into society, but the echoes of the basement whispered in his mind. He often found himself staring blankly into space, lost in thought as the images of twisted shadows and anguished faces flashed in his memory. The nightmares came often, vivid and unrelenting. They dragged him back into the depths of despair, where the creature loomed, its eyes glinting with malevolence, taunting him with the knowledge that darkness never truly died. Isolation became his refuge. Friends grew concerned, reaching out to him, but Bob's responses were distant and evasive. He couldn't bear the thought of sharing the horrors he had witnessed. One evening, as he sat alone in his dimly lit living room, a knock echoed through the silence. Hesitantly, he opened the door to find a couple standing on his doorstep, their faces painted with excitement and curiosity. They were the new owners of the ancient house. He felt a jolt in his chest, a primal instinct urging him to warn them, to share the truth. But the words caught in his throat, the weight of his experience trapping him in silence. Instead, he offered a faint smile and exchanged pleasantries, watching as they eagerly discussed their plans to renovate and restore the decaying structure. As they spoke, Bob's heart raced. He could sense the darkness still lurking within those walls, its hunger insatiable, ready to ensnare new souls. As the days passed, Bob's sense of unease grew. The couple who had moved into the house began to act strangely, their excitement fading into a shadow of despair. He watched helplessly as they transformed. their laughter replaced by hushed whispers and furtive glances. The air around the house grew heavy, thick with an ominous energy that seeped into the neighborhood. They were trapped, caught in the snare of the very darkness he had fought against. He felt a deep regret wash over him. Perhaps he should have intervened, warned them of the horrors that lurked within the walls. But the weight of his own trauma held him back. Finally, one stormy evening, he could bear it no longer. He grabbed the tome and raced toward the house, determined to confront the darkness once and for all. But as he reached the doorstep, a chilling wind swept through the air, and he hesitated. The door creaked open, revealing the couple standing in the threshold, their eyes wide with terror.
"Help us,"
they whispered in unison, their voices trembling. Bob's heart sank. He realized that the darkness had not only found a way to return, but had also claimed new victims. Bob's resolve hardened as he prepared to step inside, ready to confront the evil once more. But as he crossed the threshold, he felt a powerful force pushing against him, a malevolent energy that threatened to pull him into the abyss. The basement had awakened, and with it, the lingering darkness surged forth, reclaiming what it had lost, leaving Bob to wonder if he could ever truly escape its grasp. The battle was not just his anymore. It had become a cycle, an endless fight against the shadows that refused to die. And as the door slammed shut behind him, he knew that the horror might never be over.